The envelope was thick, cream-colored, with gold foil accents and perfect calligraphy, spelling out my name like it was an honor to be addressed. I opened it slowly behind the counter of my boutique, between checking invoices and unboxing new arrivals, thinking maybe it was a vendor thank you card or some over-the-top launch event. But the second I unfolded the card inside, my breath caught. You are cordially invited to the wedding of Lila Montgomery and Ethan Rhodes. My fingers tightened around the edge of the invitation until the paper creased. I read the names again just to make sure my mind wasn't playing some cruel joke. It wasn't. Lila, my best friend since college. Ethan, my boyfriend of nearly 5 years who had ghosted me without warning 3 months ago. My stomach turned cold. There was no, "We've started seeing each other." No awkward conversation, not even a mention that she'd bumped into him. Nothing. And now they were getting married? A soft ding pulled my attention to my phone. Lila. OMG, I know this is crazy, but I couldn't imagine doing this without you. Will you be my maid of honor? Say yes, please. I stared at the screen in disbelief. The audacity. Not only had she taken my boyfriend, apparently months ago, but she had the gall to ask me to stand beside her like nothing had happened. I typed, deleted, typed again. My heart pounded so hard I could hear it over the boutique's playlist. Then I smiled, a slow, careful smile. My fingers moved quickly. Me, of course. Wouldn't miss it for the world. If Lila thought this would break me, she'd miscalculated. If Ethan thought he could walk away like I was disposable, he'd chosen the wrong woman to underestimate. I'd learned how to survive betrayal before, but this time I was going to thrive on it. Their wedding was going to be unforgettable, just not for the reasons they hoped. 3 months earlier, Ethan had come home late, the third night in a row. His eyes bloodshot, hair a mess, his smile brittle. He said he needed space, claimed he was going through something, that it had nothing to do with me. It's just a mental health thing, he'd murmured, not quite meeting my gaze. I need to clear my head for a while. And then he disappeared. No calls, no texts. His apartment was empty within a week, and mutual friends suddenly stopped answering my questions. I'd sat on the kitchen floor for hours that first night, phone in hand, wondering what I'd done wrong. Lila had shown up the next morning with muffins and fake sympathy, claiming she was just as blindsided. I always thought he adored you, she'd said, handing me tissues like she didn't already know exactly where he was. Back then, I believed her. She came over constantly, checking in, bringing wine, gossip, stories of her dating disasters to distract me. Looking back now, it all felt so staged. Every time I started to question what happened, she'd pivot. Every time I wanted to talk about Ethan, she'd redirect. She even encouraged me to delete old photos so I could move on. Except she wasn't trying to help me move on. She was trying to erase the evidence. There had been clues, moments that didn't quite sit right. Her nervous laughter when I mentioned Ethan, the way she always knew just a little too much about where he might have gone. The subtle shift in her energy when I said I still missed him, but I'd chalked it up to discomfort, maybe misplaced loyalty. Now I knew better. He hadn't vanished because of anxiety. He'd walked out because he had already moved on, not just with someone new, but with my best friend. The ghosting, the silence, the fake comfort from Lila. It was all part of the same betrayal. They thought they'd gotten away with it. They thought I'd quietly fade into the background while they built a life on lies. But now that I knew the truth, I was done grieving. Let the games begin. I said yes, of course. What kind of best friend would I be if I didn't stand beside the bride on the happiest day of her life? I even added some emojis when I texted Lila back. The glittery heart, the champagne glasses, a ring. She responded with a stream of crying faces, and OMG, I knew you'd understand. Like she hadn't just detonated the last shred of trust between us. I poured myself a glass of wine and opened a new folder on my desktop. Operation Veil. I'd always been the organized one between us. Lila was all chaos and charm, a master of improvisation and manipulation. I, on the other hand, believed in lists, receipts, and backup plans. This wouldn't be a tantrum. It wouldn't be a screaming match or some viral cake-smashing moment. No, that would be too easy to dismiss. I didn't want to ruin her wedding day with drama. I wanted to ruin it with truth. I started with Ethan's old texts. Sweet messages from just months before he ghosted me. Screenshots of our last trip together. A picture of him asleep in my bed, timestamped 2 weeks before his grand mental health exit. Then I began checking social media. Lila's posts had been suspiciously curated around that time. Vague captions, blurry photos that didn't show who was taking them. But I remembered the shoes in one photo. I'd bought them for Ethan for his birthday. My plan wasn't to scream homewrecker in the middle of the reception. It was to plant enough evidence that their perfect image shattered on its own. I didn't need to make a scene. I just needed to hold up a mirror. And weddings had so many mirrors. The bridal salon was as obnoxiously pink as I remembered, a pastel fever dream of champagne flutes and fake laughter. Lila greeted me at the entrance with a squeal and a tight hug that lingered a second too long. "You're seriously the best for doing this," she gushed, eyes a little too wide. "I knew you wouldn't let some history get in the way." I smiled back sweetly. "Of course not. That was the past. This is your moment." She beamed, relief flashing across her face. Guilt always showed up in the small ways. The tightness in her jaw when I asked about Ethan, the way her fingers kept fiddling with her engagement ring, how she talked just a little too much. Ethan arrived halfway through the fitting, his tie undone and his hair still damp like he'd showered and rushed over. He froze when he saw me, the color draining from his face for half a second before he plastered on a smile. "Ava," he said, nodding, like we were old co-workers running into each other at a company retreat. "Ethan," I replied evenly. "You look rushed." Lila laughed too loudly. "He's always like this, late to everything." He didn't respond. He just busied himself with his phone. The tension was delicious. Lila slipped into a lace mermaid gown and twirled like we were 12 again, playing dress-up. "What do you think?" she asked, posing dramatically. I stepped closer, adjusting a strap on her shoulder. "It's stunning. It's perfect for someone completely innocent." She blinked, unsure whether she'd heard me correctly. I smiled wider. I mean pure, obviously. Classic bridal elegance. "Oh." She relaxed, but her laugh came a beat too late. She thought I'd moved on. She thought she could wear white without question. But I'd seen the cracks in their fairy tale already, and I was just getting started. I named it Dress Drama. Casual, vague, and just gossipy enough to not raise suspicion. It included a few of our mutual friends, girls Lila had partied with in college but hadn't seen much of since, plus one key addition, her cousin, Maya. Maya had always been the sharp one in the family, the quiet observer who noticed everything but rarely said a word unless it mattered. She was also the only person at the dress fitting who had side-eyed Ethan the second he walked in. "Ava, is it just me or did Ethan seem awkward yesterday?" "Jess, right? He wouldn't even make eye contact. You'd think you were the bride." Maya, "He looked like he saw a ghost." I smiled. The beauty of subtlety is that you never have to force it. You just guide people toward what they already know deep down, and then let gravity do the rest. Over the next few days, I dropped breadcrumbs. "Ava, Lila said she and Ethan started dating in February, but didn't he disappear from socials in January?" Tasha, "I remember that. He went MIA right after that trip he took with you, Ava." Maya, "Wait, didn't you guys still live together in January?" I didn't need to answer. They were already doing the math. I watched the dynamic shift in real time, the light teasing in the group chat turning into low-grade unease. Little questions, lingering doubts, small fractures forming in Lila's carefully curated narrative. I knew Lila well enough to know she'd never see it coming, especially not from me. The bachelorette weekend was everything Lila dreamed of. Rose gold decorations, a rented Airbnb with a rooftop view, matching silk robes with bride tribe, stitched in cursive across the back. She thanked me 6 times, called me a saint, said I'd truly forgiven her. Like that was something she deserved just for existing. I mean, I didn't steal him. She slurred into her second espresso martini. Technically, he was already halfway gone. Ava just made it easier for him to leave. Maya's brows lifted slightly from across the table. Later that night, at the rooftop lounge I'd surprised everyone with, Lila was on fire, tossing back shots, demanding attention, and making herself the center of every camera frame. She cornered the bartender, 22, clearly terrified, and spent a solid 10 minutes complimenting his arms while twirling her hair like she was auditioning for a reality show. Meanwhile, Maya captured everything. She wasn't even subtle, just calmly recording on her phone like she was gathering nature documentary footage. "You're getting this, right?" I whispered as Lila spilled a margarita down her top and laughed like a hyena. "Every second," Maya murmured. "She's going to regret this tomorrow." "Oh, I'm counting on it." The next morning, Lila had a headache and no memory of anything after shot number 6. Everyone else remembered everything. I sent Maya a video under the guise of checking if her phone had better quality. She sent back a single text, "Maya, you're playing chess," and I'm in. Game on. "You're not gonna like this," Maya said, sliding her laptop across the table. We were at a quiet cafe downtown, 2 lattes between us and a shared sense of rising vindication. Her screen displayed a county courthouse record search, one I hadn't dared to do myself, afraid of what I'd find. But Maya wasn't afraid. She was methodical, focused, slightly terrifying in the best way. I leaned in. There it was. Marriage license, Lila Montgomery and Ethan Rhodes. Filed February 9th. Finalized February 14th. Valentine's Day. I stared at the date for a long time. Ethan had been living with me then, still texting me things like, "Just need space. Love you always." Still kissing my forehead before vanishing for the weekend. Still pretending I mattered. My fingers curled into fists under the table. I triple-checked. Maya added, her voice low. "It's real. They did it quietly. Civil ceremony, no guests, no social media, completely under the radar." Of course, they hadn't just betrayed me. They'd planned it, hidden it, carried it out while looking me in the eye. And now, months later, they wanted me to stand beside them like none of it ever happened. "I don't want to fight her," I said slowly. "I want her to ruin herself." Maya gave me a look that was equal parts respect and warning. "She will," she said. "Just give her the right mirror." I found an old leather scrapbook tucked in the back of my closet, still half filled with photos from happier years. Beach trips, concerts, birthdays. Ethan's arm around me, both of us laughing like life was solid. It was the perfect weapon. Page by page, I curated our story, complete with captions in silver gel pen and carefully printed dates. I even included a dried rose from our 3rd anniversary and the movie stub from our first date, nostalgic, sentimental, and damningly time-stamped. The final pages were empty until I printed the pièce de résistance, a high-res scan of their marriage certificate. I centered it neatly, framing it with a gold border, and slipped it into the last page protector. Then I added a note on crisp ivory stationery. "Congratulations, love always finds a way." No name, no fingerprints, just enough detail to rattle Lila's perfect facade and make Ethan sweat through his overpriced suit. I wrapped the scrapbook in white tissue paper and tied it with a pale pink satin ribbon. Subtle, elegant, impossible to ignore. It would be delivered to the bridal suite the morning of the wedding. Let them unwrap the past right before they tried to celebrate the future, and let the countdown begin. The rehearsal dinner was held at a vineyard outside the city. String lights draped across the patio, white linen napkins folded like swans, and a guest list hand-picked for aesthetics. Lila wore a blush silk dress and a smile that looked glued on. Ethan kept checking his watch. Everything was perfect. For now. I waited until dessert had been served and wine glasses refilled. Lila tapped her glass with a fork. "And now," she said, beaming, "my best friend and maid of honor, Ava, has a few words." I stood slowly, lifting my glass, letting the attention settle like mist over the table. "I've known Lila since we were 19, I began, my voice warm, calm, and deceptively affectionate. "And one thing I've always admired about her is her ability to get exactly what she wants. Whether it was the front row seat in bio class, or the last piece of cake, or something a little more complicated." Polite laughter, a few confused glances. Ethan shifted in his chair. "But truly," I continued, "Lila is the kind of woman who makes an impression. People remember her, sometimes even long after they think they've moved on." I paused, let the words hang. Lila's fingers tightened around her wine glass. "And Ethan," I said, turning to him with a perfect smile, "you're marrying someone who's resourceful, loyal to her vision, even if that vision changes suddenly." More laughter, nervous this time. "To the couple," I finished, raising my glass, "may your future be just as honest and well-documented as your past." Ethan's face was pale. Lila's smile didn't quite reach her eyes. I sat back down and sipped my wine, savoring the silence that followed. Checkmate was coming, and they both felt it. "Emergency," I said into the phone, fake panic in my voice. "The officiant's stuck in traffic, the backup's not answering." It was 10:13 a.m., wedding scheduled for 2. Plenty of time for mild chaos to snowball. I sent a second message to the florist. "Bride changed her mind on the palette. Please hold delivery until we confirm." Then I accidentally knocked over a garment rack during a visit to the bridal suite, catching Lila's dress sleeve on a loose nail. Rip, just enough to delay a seamstress. "I'm so sorry," I gasped. "It must have snagged. It's so delicate." Lila blinked at the torn lace like it had personally betrayed her. Her hairstylist paused mid-curl. "Get Maya," she snapped. "Get the planner. Get someone." I slipped out of the room as the whispers started. The pressure was building, and she was starting to crack. Perfect. Meanwhile, a courier was pulling up to the reception hall with a carefully wrapped gift box. White tissue, pink satin ribbon, no return address. Inside, our scrapbook, the photos, the captions, the marriage certificate, my little time bomb. By the time Lila walked down the aisle, her whole life would already be unraveling in the background, and she wouldn't even know it. Not yet. The reception hall glittered in fairy lights and blush florals, all carefully curated to scream, "Dream Wedding." The kind of event people pretended not to envy while secretly taking mental notes for their own someday. Lila floated around in her gown like a pageant queen, accepting compliments with a too bright smile. Ethan looked like he hadn't slept in days. I couldn't imagine why. After dinner, the lights dimmed. "Before we move into the first dance," the DJ announced, "the maid of honor has prepared a little surprise, a slideshow celebrating the couple's journey." Lila clapped her hands together, eyes misting. "You didn't," she whispered across the table. "Oh, I did," I said sweetly. The projector blinked on. The first few slides were safe. Baby photos of Lila, childhood snapshots of Ethan. Then came high school prom shots, graduation, a cute collage of their engagement pics, the ones they had posted after the fact once the ring was safely on her finger. Polite applause, smiles, warmth. Then the music changed. Subtle, slower. And the next photo appeared. Me. Ethan. My apartment. January 23rd. Another. Me and Ethan in bed, time-stamped. A video clip of him kissing my cheek while making breakfast. The crowd shifted uncomfortably. Then texts. Ethan. "I just need more time. I can't leave her like this. I feel guilty." Ethan. Lila doesn't suspect anything. It's fine. Gasps. Murmurs. The final slide hit like a bullet. Marriage certificate. Ethan Rhodes and Lila Montgomery. Filed February 9th. Finalized February 14th. Overlaid with a simple caption, "Love always finds a way." The room exploded. Someone dropped a glass. Someone else shouted, "Are you serious?" Lila stood frozen, her hands clutching her bouquet like a lifeline. Ethan's face had gone gray. A child at one of the tables began to cry. The lights flickered back on, but the glow was gone. So was the illusion. I took a sip of champagne as the silence crumbled into chaos. "You evil bitch!" Lila screamed, throwing her bouquet to the ground. Several heads turned. Her mother gasped. Her father stood up and demanded the DJ shut the slideshow down. But the damage had been done. People were already leaving. Plates half finished, chairs scraped back, friends whispering as they made their exits, shooting the couple awkward, sympathetic looks. Lila's cousin Maya walked calmly to the center of the room, phone in hand. "For anyone who thinks this was a mistake," she said, voice loud and clear, "the marriage certificate is real. So are the texts, and I have more, if anyone's curious." Ethan turned on me, wild-eyed. "You planned this from the start." I raised an eyebrow. "No, you did. You just weren't smart enough to cover your tracks." He looked like he wanted to speak, to argue. But I reached into my clutch and pulled out a thick folder. "Receipts," I said. "Literal ones. Time-stamped, your hotel charges, your texts, your digital footprint." Lila's father was already reading over Maya's phone with tight-lipped fury. "You married her while living with me," I said, turning to Ethan. "And you let her smile in my face, lie to me, ask me to be her maid of honor. You wanted me to stay quiet, to make peace. But here's the thing." I stepped closer. Lila flinched. "I'm not the villain in this story. I'm just the one who finally read the last page." Maya added, "Also, Lila's been lying about work. She got fired months ago for trying to take credit for a co-worker's pitch. But sure, let's toast to her honesty." Lila burst into tears. Ethan stormed out. Half the guests were already gone. I watched the destruction with a calm detachment. There were no screaming matches, no thrown drinks, just the truth standing quietly in the center of the wreckage, and I had never looked better. The room was still spinning when the venue manager appeared, clipboard in hand and zero patience in her tone. "We're going to need payment in full," she said to Lila, who was now barefoot, mascara streaked and clutching her bouquet like a lifeline. "Your card was declined, twice." Lila blinked, dazed. "Ethan was supposed to handle—" "He's gone," I said, not unkindly. "Left right after someone asked him if he always cheated in formal wear." Lila turned slowly, eyes landing on me like she couldn't decide whether to scream or sob. I half expected her to lunge across the table, but the red wine someone else had spilled on her dress weighed her down like a final humiliation. She looked like a ruined debutante, a fallen prom queen, the centerpiece of her own disaster. "I gave you everything," she hissed, voice shaking. "No," I corrected. "You took everything. The difference matters." Behind us, a florist was arguing about unpaid blooms. The cake decorator demanded a signature. One of the waiters whispered to another, "Are we still getting tipped?" "I should have known," Lila muttered. "You were always the clever one." I smiled. "Thank you." Then I walked out, heels clicking confidently across the ballroom floor, chin high, spine straight. Maya followed, pausing only to give Lila one last look. "By the way," she added, "you owe me for the bachelorette weekend, and I'll need that robe back." We stepped into the night air just as the DJ cut the music and a guest muttered, "Well, that was a plot twist." I didn't need to look back. I already knew how it ended, because I wrote it. 3 weeks later, I signed a lease on a sunlit apartment with exposed brick, plants that weren't dying, and peace I hadn't felt in years. The boutique was thriving. Local press had picked up on the wedding fiasco thanks to a certain video leak from the reception. One perfectly timed upload set to dramatic piano music, and the internet did the rest. Maid of Honor Mic Drop had trended for 2 days. The comments were endless. This is art. Protect Ava at all costs. She didn't just eat, she catered the whole damn meal. I didn't post anything myself. I didn't have to. Lila and Ethan had officially split, publicly, quietly. Mutual friends stopped mentioning them, unsure whose side to take. According to Maya, Lila moved back in with her mother. Ethan was spotted at a dive bar 2 towns over, drinking alone. I got flowers from strangers. Business spiked. Clients mentioned how elegant my composure had been. One even offered me a speaking gig at a women's empowerment panel. "You didn't just survive," Maya said over wine one night. "You turned betrayal into a brand." I raised my glass. "Sometimes the best revenge," I said, "is making them watch you shine." And that was the truth. No drama, no confrontation. Just facts, receipts, and a woman who refused to stay quiet. Maya's engagement party was everything Lila's wedding had pretended to be. Intimate, warm, and effortlessly beautiful. String lights crisscrossed a garden patio, jazz music floated in the background, and laughter came easily without pretense. She looked radiant, genuinely happy, and this time, her fiancé didn't flinch when people said forever. I sipped champagne from a crystal flute, taking in the scene. No drama, no tension, no secrets hiding behind forced smiles. Just good people, good food, and a refreshing absence of betrayal. Funny how healing starts in the quiet moments, the ones without fanfare. When Maya tapped her glass for toasts, someone shouted my name. "Ava, say something!" She nodded at me from the head table, eyes sparkling. So I stood. I didn't prepare anything. I didn't need to. "I wasn't always great at toasts," I said, smiling as the group quieted. "The last one I gave, let's just say it had a lot of layers." Laughter, the good kind. But tonight is different, because this isn't about pretending or playing nice for the sake of appearances. This is about truth and healing. I glanced at Maya, who gave me a soft, knowing look. Not long ago, I stood in a room full of people who smiled to my face while lying behind my back. I lost people I trusted, but I found something better. Myself. There were a few murmurs of agreement, subtle nods. People knew. Word had gotten around, even beyond the viral video. But I wasn't here to relive the chaos. I was here to mark the shift. Pain doesn't get to define you, I continued. Betrayal doesn't get to write your story. We do. Every time we choose to stand tall, tell the truth, and refuse to be small to make others comfortable, we win. Maya reached for her fiancé's hand, her smile wide and proud. So here's to new chapters, to quiet confidence, and to the kind of love that doesn't come with a hidden agenda. I lifted my glass. Sometimes the best revenge, I said, letting the moment settle, is simply showing up, smiling, and letting the truth do the rest. The room clinked glasses, and I knew, without question, that I wasn't just surviving anymore. I was rising. Want to hear more of this? Then click on the video on the right-hand side, which is even crazier.